Send it to 7197. Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
A very warm welcome. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. My name is Edmond Chizito, your host. On Spectrum, tonight we're reviewing the week. Some of the issues we'll be looking at: the State of the Nation address. Yesterday, President Museveni spoke to the nation through Parliament, auditing his own performance after 1 year in his latest new term. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the South African Legislative Assembly elections and the speakership. Two candidates in the space of one. Eventually one gets it, and she's from the NRM. It was a coup de grace, like some people have already said. We'll talk about the fracas in the opposition. Norbert Mao, Nandla Mafawi, DP and the FDC, the two men say they won't see eye to eye for as long as it concerns politics. We'll also talk about Malawi and other issues. Our guests tonight: Honorable Bernard Atiku, Member of Parliament for Ayivu County in the West Nile, coming from the FDC party, the Forum for Democratic Change. You're most welcome, Honorable Atiku.
Thank you. Good evening, listener.
We're also joined by Mr. Charles Romushana, former Head of Political Intelligence at State House. You're most welcome, Mr. Romushana.
The Almighty God is great.
We're also joined by Mr. Nicholas Opio, legal consultant at Akido. He's also a social and political analyst. You're most welcome, Mr. Nicholas Opio.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm always fascinated by Charles's religious inclination and references each time he comes to the show. I wonder what inspires his faith.
Maybe talk to us about that at some stage. Honorable Atiku, how, in your view, was the quality of the President's speech yesterday?
Yeah, thank you so much. First and foremost, I want to thank Radio 1 for giving us this opportunity. It's my first time to meet Charles Romushana, and
I was with DPI and CA.
Oh God,
it was good. It was.
I think at that time you should have been younger than you are, because I'd expected you to be an old man.
Yes.
But all the same, I think you eat well. Coming to the point, Edmond, I think whoever tuned in to listen to the State of the Nation address yesterday, by the time the President was concluding, must have asked himself whether he's yet to issue a State of the Nation address, because the whole 3 hours was just a waste of time.
2.5 hours almost.
2.5 hours was a waste of time, because the issues that were expected to come out from the President's speech to tell us how the fiscal year has been, the plans for the medium term, which were incorporated in the financial year 2011-2012, and the long-term plans. What we were able to hear was the long-term plans. You heard of the so many roads that are to be done countrywide. To me, that was the only part which was which fitted well in the State of the Nation address, but it was a promise or visioning the future. Yet we had a financial year which is ending this month.
Yes.
That we needed to hear from him how the economy has been doing, how many employment opportunities they have created. For instance, during the last year's State of the Nation address, he announced that there was going to be 43 billion. Was it 43, 44 billion?
44 billion for the young people.
Exactly, for the youth.
He's already given half.
By yesterday, as he was giving the State of Nation address, there was no mention of the youth fund. So really, to me, it was an escapist interaction. And when I was reading on Facebook, the youth have actually labeled it State of the Nation jokes and address jokes. So really, many people were left disappointed, and I think the President ought to do better. But nonetheless, really, this was expected, because if you see or you review how the financial year has been, you'll know that really there's nothing really for the President to be proud about, and that he needed to prepare a speech that would be quantifiable and of value to the Ugandans, especially after after taking 1 year after the general elections. So really, we're to see maybe in the State of the Nation address of next year, or during the budget speech, which is coming on 14, to see whether there will be any change. Otherwise, really, many people were left hopeless.
All right. Well, I watched it yesterday. Some people were awake, some people were not, did not appear to be awake, but it was a very interesting.
They were in deep reflection.
Nicholas Opio, could you talk to us about what your own view was of that speech yesterday?
Well, you see, I sat in there and listened to the president. Fortunately, I wasn't asleep like many people. I was. You see, in terms of the speech, I think if that speech was a reflection of the 26 years of the NRM government, it would be a very wonderful speech. Secondly, if that speech was about setting what I think is the overall future projection of this country, it's a wonderful speech in that respect, because the president talks about our transformation from a consumption economy to a production economy. He's emphasizing the question of infrastructure development as a long-term solution to spurring growth. You know, he's talking about the question of investing in energy and power. He's talking about the question of reviving the economy, long-term goals. If that speech was about setting out a vision for Uganda, 15-20 years, wonderful. If that speech was about assessing the president's 26 years in power, it's even strange that he took that occasion to begin that speech with an assessment of his 26 years in power. You know, so in that sense, that speech is a wonderful speech. It's a speech that sets, I think, in my view, a very broad overview of where Uganda has been, but also where he wants to take Uganda in the next 15 years. Because if you're talking about roads,
the next 15 years,
all the roads that he's mentioned are roads that will never be completed in this 1 year. There are roads that have been mentioned before. You know, there are roads that have not been constructed before. So I think in that sense, it's a wonderful speech. But does that speech serve the intent of a State of the Nation address? I think it doesn't substantially. It does not, you know, in large part. We are in a country where we are involved in Somalia, where the police has raised the level of terrorism alert to near red. And you have a whole president speaking about State of the Nation address and mentions no single word about terrorism. That, in my view, I thought was very glaring omission. There's a huge problem of youth unemployment. The president himself acknowledged that and committed some money in the last financial year and said that he would provide employment to the youth with that money. He doesn't mention a thing about it. The president mentioned in the past that he's going to set up a committee to investigate political leaders involved in corruption cases. He hasn't done it. He comes back to Parliament, talks to the nation about it, doesn't mention progress made on those promises. The president promised the nation that he's going to set up market information center, job information centers in major towns in this country. In his last speech, he comes back to Parliament. There's no assessment or a report on what he has done. So I think in terms of addressing the most immediate and current needs of this country, that speech largely didn't do it, didn't address those issues. I think it largely, and you see, you can understand that comes with somebody who has stayed in power for so long. When you've stayed in power for so long, you tend to begin to look at the overall reign in power as what should define Uganda. I think that defining Uganda by 1986 is, in my view, not very helpful now. We need to begin to look at what is the current problem, what are the concrete proposals to address inflation, for example, to address the high cost of living, to address the macroeconomics, because our macroeconomy is very unstable. It keeps on fluctuating. Interest rates, the value of the shilling, it is never stable. I think the president missed the chance. And I hope Maria takes the chance to outline this initiative, next week on Thursday, to clearly define what this government is going to do the next financial year to address these macroeconomics uncertainties.
Charles Ramushara.
I've heard them.
Oh, me? What is the speech of the president?
Because my honorable friend here is saying that the president should have talked about the youth fund, and this friend of mine is also listing a number of areas that the president should have commented about. The president is not a vendor of fried G-nuts. Is not a G-nuts, fried G-nuts vendor. That he should be talking about the bag, how many bags of Nsenene were sold in a fiscal year. No, how much. This can come out in ministerial statements. I'm comfortable with his speech because it gave the state of the nation, and the state of the nation. The nation is vibrant. The nation is vibrant. The nation is stable. The police is functioning, the judiciary is robust. That's why you're earning a living.
I disagree with you on that. The Supreme Court of this country is not fully constituted to hear constitutional
Yeah, it will be. Don't worry.
It has been for the last
the movement is in charge.
The courts are living in
Even the IGG, don't worry, because
The police is praising
you know how to study. You remember I told you it's very dangerous to appoint a poacher to look after wild animals. You have to be very careful. You will end up having a criminal as a justice of the Supreme Court. Parliament is doing well where you are. Actually, he listed the achievements of your parliament. Actually, he was extremely very generous to your parliament.
Can I inform you?
The army is very robust. We don't have any operating insurgency now in the country, within the borders of the country.
Can I give you information?
Let him continue.
If there is any confusion, it's underground. You are not seeing any fraud now. What are moving underground if there are any at all? So the country has survived. Because you congratulated the police for having defeated the BSG, your FDC group, because you had pushed the state to actually registering you. You are strengthening the constitution, and the constitution survived. The 1995 constitution. There are many constitutions that are collapsing. Even in Kenya, they have just promulgated one.
I'm just hearing this from you now.
Yeah, so you of course, children were killed because of the demonstrations.
By who?
By your FDC forces that were infiltrated within the security forces. So my contention, that my view that the rest should be, and it's not easy to secure a country from a group that is obnobbing with terrorism, but is operating under the cover of democracy. But surely by this crave for human rights, it is difficult to move on it. That's why you were saying the other day, after you killed the police officer, that if you had been armed, you would have been easily neutralized. But now you must be dealt with. And you see how it behaved in the parliament. Head of state is delivering a speech, and you are heckling him.
Ministers are sleeping.
And you are heckling him. No, they are closing their eyes because their ears are being disturbed by the prayers of the opposition. Now, about terrorism. About terrorism.
Yes.
Because you said he didn't comment about it. That's not how they fight terrorism. You don't fight terrorism by praying to the gallery.
By the way, what we are doing is to redirect the president to the state of national
you fight terrorism by neutralizing it. That's why you have not had explosions here.
Yes.
There have been explosions in Chigari. There have been explosions in Kenya. You don't.
How is that related to this?
Because you are not allowed to go far. If you had been allowed to go far, I don't know where it would have been. Now, so in my view, don't worry, you'll get the rest in other speeches. Be patient. There is the end of your speech. There is the speech at independence. There is the don't worry. For me that have not been covered, they can
must wait for those.
This is a summary. Because you see the audience you was talking to is also a different audience.
The president was addressing the country.
Yeah, and you address the cultural and pertinent issues. We're talking about the state of the nation. Yeah, it's not about potholes somewhere.
All right.
How is the police? How is the judiciary? How is the parliament? How is the army? And the agencies of the state, like the Bank of Uganda, how is it handling the economics? How is foreign affairs? That's how the state in relation to other states of Uganda are behaving. Not how many have jiggers, for you are not gazing and you have rice. Those come in different statements, like the budget speech can sort out those and
all right.
So in my own opinion, it was well thought out.
Honorable Atiku, he says the public order management bill will come and then everything is going to be all right.
Yeah, I think this is one of the issues that Parliament is to consider. It's a bill that has been pending for some time. The other day we thought it was going to be passed. It had to be shelved a bit. So it's something really that does not only concern us as Ugandans. The international community is involved, human rights groups are involved, and all parties that are stakeholders in this country have a say, and we have consulted widely, and I'm sure Parliament will not pass this bill just because the President wants it passed. It will have to be scrutinized, and at worst, or at most,
It's going to be watered down.
it could be rejected.
Or it could be rejected.
Exactly. If we find the Constitution provides for it, the Penal Code Act and other legal provisions cater for observance of human rights.
The President said he's not going to raise salaries. What's your view there?
That?
He's not going to raise salaries. People should take a pay cut.
I think this is
Only
one other issue which the public is bitter about. I'm sure at the time, actually that's why he actually increased the appetite or anxiety in the public to wait for the budget speech, because everybody wants to first hear what is in the
actual figures.
So by the time the budget speech is read, that's when people will come out to pour their anger. Otherwise, of course, many times this is a man who is not reliable.
If I just make quick,
Today he will say one thing, tomorrow he does another one. So people are still in a bias, as I said.
Edward, if I may just quickly mention, the President thinks that the solution of solving every problem is to pass a law. You know, you see, he promised that he would pass a law in his last speech, not this one, to confiscate government, properties of government officials who are involved in corruption scandals. He hasn't passed that law. He then comes back this year and says he wants another law on corruption and economic sabotage. I think that certain things can be best resolved, not necessarily by legislating against it. I mean, we know that several laws have been passed, and these laws have actually gathered dust. I think that the President needs to begin to look at other means of resolving problems as opposed to gagging people by actually passing laws. And I think that the problem of the Public Order Management Bill is its compliance with human rights standards. I think the spirit in which that bill is drafted, in my view, is wrong. It's simply a response to an increasingly discontented opposition, which should address their concerns really, as opposed to gagging, as expressed through the opposition. You see, I think that he should be looking at ways of resolving some of the concerns that they actually talked about. Now, going back to the question of salaries, I think the President's response was, in my view, very insensitive, because you cannot tell civil servants who, by the way, have made sacrifices in holding this country to what it is now, that we don't have money for salaries. Go and cultivate your gardens to make for the deficit. You go and wait for oil proceeds. That is unfair. I think we've got to begin to address the concerns of the very people who are holding this country, into what it is, because that has a direct relationship to corruption. Because the very reason standards of civil service in this country is declining is the question of corruption. If you want to address that, part of the solution, I think, in my view, lies in resolving the question of disparities of salaries. You cannot give LC1s and councillors salaries and pay political leaders and not pay teachers, who are actually the ones who are making this country have the scientists you want to pay. I think you need to address, you can't emphasize the question of UPE when you can't address the question of the learning environment, the question of the teachers who are teaching, the question of schools, the question of teaching materials. These are issues I think the President needed to have given more priority, because it's not just enough to say UPE is here, we must begin to have quality education in our country.
He wants to borrow money from the NSSF.
Another bad idea. I think it's a bad return for workers. In my view, I think that workers' investment should be in other areas, not lending to government.
Well, I was looking at some figures before I came here. Actually, there's no money in NSSF. They have 2.4 billion in long-term investments. 1.1 trillion is already borrowed by the government in treasury bonds. So they have about 14 billion shillings in cash and balances. So the President won't get much. He's already borrowed it anyway. So treasury bonds. So normally, the NSSF buys
that amounts to inciting. That amounts to inciting people. But their money is not there, has been borrowed.
It's already been borrowed.
Others invested, others borrowed. That's
anyway, that's not a big problem. There is no serious contradiction in that. The President is a manager of a revolution. This is a liberation organization. You see, that's the problem with some elements in our society. They want to discuss our politics on an abstract. they look at the ideas, they don't look at the objective situation on the ground. There was NRA, it waged war in 1980 and it captured power in 1986. And the president always wants to make that history a living history. Yeah, it's not part of your Facebook, it's not part of your Generation X. No. So it tells you are where you are because the foundation is in 1986. And this was our vision. Now, the leaders of revolutions, of liberation organizations like Mao Zedong and the others, they give directions. You give directions.
NSSF. Let's talk about the NSSF.
You give directions. The NSSF is a very small thing.
The state is going to borrow it. It could have repercussions. So
because Nipra was briefed there was a lot of money. So if it is not there, you will leave it. Now, the organs of the state, the duty of the organs of the state is now to implement that direction. And sometimes, if they find they can't, then they leave it. That's why there is parliament. And parliament is independent. You work in your caucuses, where you are a minority, that's your own problem. Now, so if he says we need to control riotous people, not people who are demonstrating peacefully, people who go to markets to eat meat and
people who sleep at the city square
and they disturb markets. You have been seeing a president with the mayor going in markets to disturb the markets. People who do that, how do you hold them? How do you handle them when you don't have the law? Now, it is your duty.
The riotous.
The intention is different. The best group will not go to the market because they are hungry and they want to eat from there. Their places are Sheraton, Grand Imperial, to mention but a few. But they go there because they want to disturb that ground. So they know they will provoke the police. Now, so the duty of parliament is now to debate. So if the president has said in his directions that he's not going to increase the salaries of teachers or of civil servants, and you parliament are convinced that their salaries should be increased, then increase it because you have the final say on the budget. True, policy. That's true. So why don't you? When the budget comes to you, instead of with those directions, and the moment you have, then it's a complete direction of the state.
Okay, well, go for a break. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. Go for a break. We'll be back.
When Junior lost his appetite, his mother tried all methods to get him to eat. She tried scary stories.
Eat, Tommy, eat, or the big black elephant will come and eat all your food.
She tried magic.
Tommy, if you eat your food, I will turn this handkerchief into sweets. Look, bumble, bumble, boom, boom.
Then she discovered Apetal multivitamin syrup with lysine.
Mommy, I finished all the food. I am number 1.
Apetal multivitamin with lysine is helping mothers to turn mealtime frustration to a fun moment. Apetal has a great taste and contains lysine, which quickly improves your child's appetite and supports healthy growth. Apetal, help for life.
Hear the voices and the sound of Africa. One love, one spirit, one heart in Africa. See the beautiful sunset of Africa.
Celebrate Africa with one rate, One Africa from Airtel. Call across all Africa at a flat rate of only 10 shillings per second. That's right, 10 shillings per second all day, all night. And stand a chance to win a fully paid trip for 2 to Mombasa every week. Another reason to celebrate Africa in proud association with Fly 540 Airlines and Serena Hotels. Terms and conditions apply. Airtel.
John, Mike and I, we go back a bit. We knew John at the beginning, working for someone else. But he was different. He had vision, saw opportunities. He started working towards his goal, opened his own garage, and worked, learning the hard way. His reputation spread. Trust, consistency, quality. Soon people were coming to him from all parts. He made himself and his whole street prosper, and also helped friends, seeing potential in people and helping them on. But John never shouts about all his success. He's just who he is. Special.
So here's to men like John, who make a difference, who enjoy Nile Special, the rich, satisfying taste from the source. Nile Special. You've earned it.
Not for sale to persons under 18.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Welcome back on Spectrum. Tonight we're reviewing the week. We've been talking about the State of the Nation address. Some people have said it looks more like an overview of the 26 years rather than the State of the Nation address, giving an audit of the last year and forecasting into the new year. We're going to be going to Arusha right now to talk about the East African Legislative Assembly election that just took place. Our guests tonight, Honorable Bernard Atiku, Ahivu County MP, coming from the FDC party, Mr. Charles Romushana, former head of political intelligence at State House, and Mr. Nicholas Opio, legal consultant at Archiville, also social and political analyst. You might not be able to call in tonight, but you can send a text message. What you do is type the word Spectrum, leave a message, question or comment, and send it to 7197. That is Spectrum, message body 7, send it to 7197. Mr. Nicholas Opio, did Arusha have to happen the way it did? Two candidates from the NRM end up being nominated officially, or originally we hear it's only one candidate, and then the underdog beats the favored one. What does it say about the NRM?
Well, of course, the president attempted to explain that at the tail end of his speech yesterday, and then said that there was no official candidate from the NRM. In fact, when he was heckled by the opposition and told that David Bahati had actually said that Dora was the official candidate, he said no, he was just excited. So it's interesting. But I think, in my view, the event in Arusha speaks of two things. The first is a rather uncoordinated, an unplanned process on the part of the Ugandan delegation, because if the Ugandan delegation had gone there a little bit more organized, there was no need for us to begin fighting before the other East African countries. We would have agreed on a candidate and supported that candidate. The fact that you had members of Ugandan parliament going there to campaign for two different candidates and having very ugly scenes on what you saw on NTV, people refusing to shake hands of others, throwing flowers at others, it's completely uncalled for. I think it speaks of how disorganized the process was, and in terms of how it was managed by the NRM, because we all knew, because David Bahati, who is a NEC official at the NRM, addressed the nation and told the nation that the agreed candidate is actually Honorable Dora Byamukama. And then at the last minute, we see all this.
Well, was it probably the damage control? It's already happened, so we have to own up.
Well, of course.
Could Dora Byamukama be the official candidate, but because she's defeated, then the party has owned?
Well, first, I don't buy the explanation offered. I think that some things are not being told, because I think my reading, and then from people I've spoken to, what happened in Arusha was an extension of the internal outfall in the NRM. It was a pure
the internal fallout,
the fallout in the NRM, the fight between the succession groups that has pitched the Prime Minister on one hand and the President and his friends on the other. In fact, now
you're saying the Prime Minister is not a friend of the President?
Well, he is a friend of, he's an ally of the President, but in as far as succession is concerned, I think we've got to a point where he thinks that it is his turn. I mean, the man has been posturing to, for all intents and purposes, to show that he's ready for the presidency. So I think that from what I hear, that was an extension of that fight. Because you see, if you just flash back a few minutes, a few months ago at Shankwazi, the Prime Minister outsmarted the President in a debate about the SG seat of the NRM.
The Secretary General.
The President wanted him to resign, and somewhat he was outsmarted by the President.
The President wanted the Secretary to resign?
To resign, yes. And somewhat he outsmarted the President. In fact, information that I have is that the President then called his number two, Ria Kategaya, and said, why is this guy behaving this way? And a few things were exchanged. It is therefore no surprise then that the person who heads this disorganization in Arusha was the same Ria Kategaya. I think it reflects the succession tension between inside the movement, and in my view, it's something boiling and might actually explode very soon.
We'll get a little bit more of that. Honorable Atiku, did EALA have to happen the way it did in Arusha?
First, I'm a little hesitant to comment on this, but
because you got political chiboko.
Not really. We are not yet done.
You are still a BSG.
You had the President
Court of Justice in Arusha,
the NRM, but we are not yet done. Wait for the the monsoon wind. All I can say is, I think tsunami. I don't want to talk of tsunami now.
Go on, sir. Let's hear the monsoon.
Sometimes it comes with good things.
Right, go on.
Yeah. What I can say is, I think, being a Ugandan posture or picture at East African level, I think the NRM owes us an apology. As a country,
some MPs try to fight according to pictures we saw on television. Maybe that was made by.
Leave alone.
Maybe it was made by the TV station here.
Not doctored. They really fought. Leave alone the fight. They exchanged, words that you cannot express amidst children, or if you're in an audience where you have 10 people. And to me, really, it was an embarrassment. It was uncalled for members of parliament, first of all from Uganda, to go there and begin speaking such nasty words and begin fighting over something that is not supposed to be. Actually, for them, they are supposed to have been hosted in the galleries. Sit there quietly, monitor how everything is unfolding, and thereafter congratulate whoever will have won, and go maybe for a cocktail, and that will be the end of it. So really, for me, competition as in for the speakership really shouldn't have been taken to that extent. The people who were competing there were all Ugandans. I would have actually expected all the people who had expressed interest to be allowed to contest
for this position.
And thereafter, whoever comes out as a winner, and then we say, this is our speaker, and we move forward. But to begin saying that one is an underdog and what, but what does the law say? All the people who have been elected as IALA representatives have got their rights, their own rights, to contest for this position. So really, to me, the fights, the exchanges among the IALA members and MPs who really had little to do in Arusha, really
maybe they were trying to find something to do on this side, even though they did without gloves. Charles Romshan.
This thing is a creation of the media. The media blew it out of proportion. Because you see, a jika can't have the size of an elephant.
Yes, it's in your leg. It's cut.
How did you reach the daughter throwing a bouquet of flowers?
No, the media made it up. Go on.
That's why you see that I'm talking about being blown out of proportion. There are very many things to go on, but which are not telecast. The media always ignores a lot of things. Even some few things are extremely very horrible. Even why in that house, if the media, if the red paper was to cover everything you do there,
why the red paper?
Because it's very critical what you do in your places there. It would have been very, very serious, but they don't. So so there is where the media sometimes praise it responsible, because you are talking about the behavior of a country in a foreign land where we are trying to have international relations. If you are talking about the interest of your country, there's kind of things you don't need to over-exaggerate, and there are many things to cover in this country that are very serious.
But they say people
now, the second one,
well, like rain falling.
The second one, if Honorable Margaret Zuwa was not favored by NRM, there is no way she would have gone to Arusha.
But she got three votes in the NRM caucus.
I'm saying if she was not favored by NRM, there is no way
for the speakership or
for because at first you had to be a delegate.
Yes.
Yeah,
maybe they thought she was good enough as a delegate, not as a speaker.
So what I'm saying, if therefore she was not favored by NRM, there is no way she would have gone to Arusha. And those who are not favored by NRM, including FDC, did not go.
Right.
It's only DP that was now those three. I don't have a lot of faith in that whole thing, that whole community thing. That whole community thing. That whole community thing.
We'll talk about that another time.
Why? Why do you leave that one? How will that thing protect NSSF fund? How will it protect our peasants in the villages?
Yes,
how is it going to protect our security?
Those are technical issues.
Yes,
how is it protecting our environment? This lake is being degraded.
Okay.
We share it.
Right.
If you can't see, if you can't hear the East African community in protecting Lake Victoria, that's drivers.
We'll talk about
people are crossing borders and they are not forced
to talk about that.
Refugees are entering. Have you heard them talk about the refugees are coming from?
Can you talk to us about this? You say you made a serious allegation. These succession battles have spilled over now. They've crossed the border. How do you explain this kind of theory?
Well, you see, I can tell you the apparent fallout the apparent debate within the NRM about succession is not secret. The jostling for power, the jostling for who should be, top of the queue.
But they're succeeding.
Go on. It's no secret.
Yes, succeeding.
Okay? I think there's internal debate about the transition post Museveni. And that debate has manifested itself in so many other things. Because if you begin to flash back and look at the arrest and incarceration of the former vice president, what he said thereafter, if you begin to hear, you saw him now using a different symbol, not the thumbs up.
He changes his heart.
He has abandoned the movement look-alike. That debate has been going on within the movement, and that debate, in many ways, has affected the national politics. What I'm saying is what I heard from credible sources.
Yes.
That these discussions are actually ongoing, and in all these discussions, a key player who is emerging unexpected as a key power broker is Kategaya.
Area Kategaya. He was one of the closest friends of the president before they fell out briefly.
Number two in the NRA. So you can see that this debate, in many ways, is manifesting itself in the way that national politics is actually played, because the players are the same. You have a prime minister who, for all intent and purposes, thinks that is now his time, and you have an establishment within the movement itself that thinks that Uganda is still good and the NRM is good with Museveni, and yet there's this impatience about him having to leave. That is affecting national politics. Therefore, then playing camps against each other. Then you have this camp then going to Arusha to campaign for different candidates.
Now we have had a number of prime ministers before.
Yes.
We had Honorable Chintu Musoke.
Yes.
We had Cosmas Sadiebo. We had Kiseka. We had Professor Apollon Savambi, and we have now Honorable Mbabazi. Honorable Mbabazi is not extraordinary. He's like any of those. No. He's like any of those prime ministers who have served this republic. Yes, if you are talking about the one who is nearest to the president, is the vice president of the republic. The constitution is clear about it. Still, this is a creation or an exaggeration of the media and some of their agents. In this succession thing, why do you want to see?
The thing I'm talking about is the internal discussion within the NRM, not within
those things are not there.
Transferring and affecting power.
Let's move forward.
Because secondly, in NRM is actually very far off.
Let's talk about something else. Pardon me, Honorable Atik, after the DP and DPC got candidates nominated to the ELA elections, Honorable Nandala Mafavi, leader of opposition, accused the two parties of betrayal, and then he said he would never talk to Mao again unless it's something else other than politics.
And let me confirm this. I was in a meeting just a few days ago where we resolved not to work with DP anymore, because according to us, it's like there's no party called DP, and we'll work with a few clear-headed individuals who still think there is DP until they realize that there's no DP, and we'll offer them shelter.
Go on.
The truth of the matter is, we had discussions before these Yala elections, and there are issues that we recognized that would jeopardize the legality of our representatives in Yala, because Article 50 of East Africa Treaty is very clear on this. It gives terms within which a National Assembly can operate in terms of identifying candidates. And in our case, when you look at words like as much as feasible,
political
the various political parties, and shades of opinion, and
other considerations.
Exactly. So in our case, as Uganda, all this was to our side, to exercise mature democracy and say we are sending people to the regional assembly to represent the interests of Uganda, and for this matter all parties in the parliament, really it was as much as feasible for all parties to be represented in Iyala, and that would give credence and credit to Uganda. But this was not followed, and we said initially, actually Uganda had and it lies. I mean, not fulfilled what Article 50 was.
And that's why FDC is in the court.
So this time when the court pronounced itself on the Mbide case, we said I think it's time for the law really to be adhered to fully, and that's why we said all the smaller parties, let's move together. And we agreed.
But you called them smaller parties. And you agreed?
Yeah, in terms of our numbers in parliament.
And you agreed?
Yeah, we agreed that let's move on this together. What did we see?
All right.
DP and UPC nominating the candidates against the agreement. So really, that was clear to us that I think it's now time.
You've drawn the lines.
Exactly.
Well, I'm going to be bold and tell you that what has happened during the YAL elections will lead to a huge reconfiguration of the opposition parties in this country. I think that there's going to be huge fallout within the FDC. I mean, we've seen that in their primaries, in their rather meaningless primary, really, because if they were not taking part in the elections, there's no need for them to hold a primary. In my view, that wasn't necessary. I mean,
you think that tore the party apart? It creates some rifts within
it has definitely exposed a big secret we've never known before, the internal division within the FDC. I mean, you saw their primaries being bloody. My view is, my prediction is, the FDC party is going to seriously reconfigure. You're going to see major fallouts within the FDC. Don't be surprised if key FDC members actually leave the FDC. But going beyond the FDC, the entire...
Where would they go, briefly?
Well, they could go into private business in the same way Musingi went into private business, or they could join the NRM or join the DP or join the UPC. That I see happening in the next couple of
or they will be forced to retire like Professor Ogenga.
Or they become farmers like Professor Latigo. Secondly, I think in terms of relations with other parties, I think the FDC, in my view, in terms of its outlook, has this big brother mentality, which I think rubs the other parties the wrong way. Because parties seem to want to operate from the point of equality. You know, either I have one...
And they don't get as much respect from the FDC.
I think the FDC tends to play the big brother role and overshadows the others, and the space has to be created for them to operate. If they don't create that space, the FDC will find itself alone in Parliament, leading the opposition side.
And the numbers will be smaller.
I think so. I think so.
By the way.
Yeah,
so the other people could side with the NRM anyhow. We can't accept that. Charles Romushana.
The FDC is a branch of NRM.
No.
I told you, can you listen?
No,
I listened when you were to submitting. I listened when you were talking.
Unlike NRM, which is still renting. Really?
You don't get any still renting. I told and the best
being attached because of failure to pay rent.
I was with
FDC is a political party.
Yes, I listened.
Inaugurated.
Yes, it's the same big brother mentality.
Let's be fair.
Movement looking at the FDC.
You are here to represent the movement. I'm here to represent the FDC.
I haven't said I'm representing the movement.
All right, let's move forward.
I have a right.
You're getting deep into controversy. This is not a part of the NRM.
I mean, it's my view.
Let's go.
It's my view, and I have a right to
let's go forward.
FDC formed the SUVI and cut DP in 2-2. And then I had wanted to co-opt the other barons into IPC. They woke up very quickly and realized that. You know, he was not there during CA. I was with his elder, Nick Nyai. That's why you should have been patient. You should have been patient enough to listen.
This is about 20 years ago.
There are words like to be Jeko. It does not refer to DPs. It does not refer to CPs. It refers to the NRMs who rebelled within and wanted to go and they were let to go. Now this is why we have buffer. And I don't want to go into details. I don't want to go into the details. And they are the ones who form FDC from reform agenda and the path. But I don't want to go into this because I hadn't come with a pen and notebook to take note. Therefore, I still maintain FDC is a branch, and And in the area elections, in the area elections, there were no disputes. Okay. There was no quarreling. You shared properly. Okay. Now time has come that they should also share with the others. Right. And they have shared with the others. Right. You can wait. You go to a political
Chancellor, let's talk about the Malawi and President Joyce Banda. She's a new person, a woman, the second woman president in Africa. She has said that if Bashir set foot in Malawi, he would be arrested. So the AU has decided to move on Bashir's request. The summit, which is supposed to take place in Lilongwe, to Addis Ababa. Is that what the AU is supposed to do?
She's still new on the scene.
She's been invited.
Well, but they were denied aid because of ties.
She's still new on the scene. Africa has got a lot of dynamics. If you have to study the state relations in Africa, yes, the politics in Africa, it's a little
African brotherhood.
It's a little bit complex. So from the, that's why it's good to have this experienced people lead African states. Like President Museveni, you don't simply.
I think Chas is just making this like much.
No, I'm very serious. Because you need to see the centrality of Bashir, first and foremost, to see the role of the ICC in hunting heads of states of Africa, in embarrassing the heads of states of Africa. ICC, they always say that you should be the last. Do you know how much people have read about Amin? Is it all accurate? Okay. Yes. So the whole point that they say about people is not exactly. That's why we have.
Let's not end this show without us.
My final word on this, and I need to be protected, Mr. Chairman.
But the time is not on your side.
Yeah, but it's not me who is taking it. It is the discipline of the FDCs. So we need to. Africa needs to move as a bloc, more especially when it is challenged by foreign powers. Okay. The foreign powers that control ICC. Okay. Russia is not a signatory to the ICC, neither is America. And it's a thing they are using against those, they don't ever against them.
Malawi is not the only country to have stopped Bashir from setting foot on their shore. Botswana has done that. South Africa has done that. So the number is growing. That there are many African leaders now waking up to the reality that leaders who commit heinous crimes in their country need not be protected.
But they can be tried by
Because you see, I think that the Malian president represents, in my view, an emerging breed of African leaders. New breed. Because upon assuming powers, she sold presidential jets.
Exactly.
She repealed the anti-gay law in her country. She's becoming more receptive.
So she's a populist.
To what I think is an emerging consensus in the world about common standards of governance. The rest of Africa, in my view, haven't woken up to that because they have leaders who have been in power for 27 years, 30 years, and who in their backyards have got skeletons to hide. And they think that if these skeletons are let out, they actually might be the next victim. And hence, they have to protect Bashir.
Edmond, I think this is one of the few presidents that we're seeing, and I'm sure when
in one sentence, yes?
Yeah, when we come to the general elections, should be given another term. All right, because the president who comes on board sells presidential jets, which is a luxury, and begins to look at the concerns of the ordinary person.
Companies are president.
Really, Bashir is an indicted criminal. Anybody who allows him free entry into his country really should be labeled as promoting.
All right, we've got some comments from the listeners. Martin Amo says, Spectrum, what His Excellency the President gave Ugandans was not the State of the Nation address but a campaign. Then somebody else, Mr. Choma, I believe it's a Mr., says, Mr. Romushana, you are one of the few brainy people Uganda is proud of. Good debate for you. That's Choma.
Your mighty God is great.
Yes. There's also Michael from Makerere University. There's also Michael from Makerere University. He says, why is Mr. Romushana talking so simply like a senior 2 graduate? Chatterbox or something. The final caller says, I'm Matthias Oboyogere. The speech was very unnationalistic, boring, and lacked direction. Perhaps before we go, well, you've got a bit of the two things. Before we go, Sudan, there's an impasse in Sudan. So I still call them rebels. South Sudan and Sudan, the mainstream, have failed to agree. They've come out of Addis Ababa without agreeing. How is it going to be resolved in the end, Nicholas?
Well, it does, of course, still points to the hopelessness of the African Union, because the African Union seems not to have a solution for their brother in Sudan. Sudan, and yet they're protecting Bashir. I think they need to begin to be a little bit more proactive in these issues and not wait for American brothers or NATO or European Union to find a solution to African problems. I think they need to do that.
Charles, briefly, what do you think should happen south and the north?
Their contradictions will be solved by war. They fight.
What about it? Dialogue is in this case, it is the AU which is the institution that can bring the two sides to talking.
Well, they brought them into Addis Ababa. They pack their bags. They can.
No, you can never end there. There is a process in terms of bringing peace. So if dialogue fails, what else happens? They can co-opt other institutions to come on board. The UN is still there.
No, somebody is pushing SPLM to.
We should expedite all these procedures until we come to an amicable settlement of this.
We have to end here. Thank you very much, Nidadia. Guest Honorable Bernard Atiku, Nigerian name. He comes from Aivu County. He's an MP there from the FDC.
Just correct. Charles is a graduate of Makerere University, former Guild President Makerere.
He's not a graduate of senior. Charles Mushana, former head of political intelligence at State House. Thank you for coming tonight. Mr. Nicholas Opio, legal consultant at Architect, social and political analyst with very good insights. Thank you for tuning in. I've been your host, Edmond Chizito. Spectrum will be back on Monday. Up next, though, if you stay tuned, you'll hear the news in English.
Thank you.